But what does data modernisation mean to you and the organisations that you've worked with? And is there a difference, or how does data modernisation relate to digital transformation, which seems to be, still a topic du jour?
I think to your question of data modernisation, what does it mean to me? I think I'll take the data bit out of it, which might annoy some people, but actually for me, it's about what you do with it. So it's about the speed to insight-driven decisions being sort of quicker, being easier, being more accurate from data modernisation. And that's not to say you can't do it if you don't have a modernised data estate. I've been there in a data estate that was held together with sticky back plastic because you had some really good people who knew where to put the sticky tape and where to undo the sticky tape to get, but it was hard work. You didn't feel very agile. You felt quite slow and cumbersome, but you got through it, and hoping eventually someone would put some money up to say, let's modernize it because actually we can make it much quicker, easier, reproducible and accurate. So I suppose that's what that bit means to me. I think the digital transformation, the one thing I've seen is with that is a number of sort of proliferation of sort of tools and products and services that all consume some data and all produce some data. And sometimes they don't really produce some data because actually it's sitting inside the product, and you've got to go through an API or something to get that data out. So one of the things I've seen with a lot of digital transformation is you suddenly end up with 10, 15, 20 different systems, products, services that you've got to go and link into to get a data set to then do some insight and analytics or even reporting. Let's start at the bottom. Let's start at reporting because you've got to get that right. And actually, digital transformation sometimes has made that hard because they've been worrying about the fancy tools and we can, transact online and everything, but forget they can't measure it on day one they go live. Well, they might do. They've got some developers going to run a bit of SQL, and then on day two, someone says developer's left or he's a consultant and he's bored. Actually, they didn't really think about setting up some pipelines, pushing that data into a platform, and then measuring things properly.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very relevant. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, really interesting, Graham, hearing that story you had. I think for me, data modernization is about separating data from the systems and thinking about it a bit more agnostically. And typically in the organizations I've worked for, they've really struggled to separate conceptually the data from the systems that house it. So just taking that data, moving it across systems, modernizing those systems, of course, maybe that's, moving it to the cloud or starting to think about different types and structures of data other than that standard structured data that we've all sort of grown up with, as it were. So yeah, so it's different systems, of course, but for me, it's thinking about it differently. And so data modernization is something I'm in the process of trying to do with the organization. That's how I see it. How does that relate? Sorry, just to say, in terms of digital transformation, that isn't just systems, but it's people and process as well.
I think that's a good point. And Stuart, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of a little bit echo a little bit of both about what Joel and Graham have just said. Really, I think the way I think about, again, taking data out of the equation a little bit and saying, actually it's about modernisation. For me, it's all about how do you help an organisation drive benefit and advantage for itself, for its stakeholders, through the better use of and maybe improving the use of data. So one of the things that I've wrestled with both as a consultant and working on, if you like, if I sort of say on the client side, is getting the right data to the right people at the right time. And I know people we sort of say, we kind of bandy this around as consultants a lot, but it's absolutely critical. If you can't see it, you're probably not thinking about it, and if you're not thinking about it, you're unlikely therefore to be spending much time keeping it fit for purpose and using it to drive better business decisions. So identifying how to better enable an organisation to function and drive benefits the key for me, and modernisation therefore could relate to any part of that. So that could be Well, clearly it could be the data, it could be the technology the data sits in, but more often than not, it's more about the processes, the people, the organization, how that's structured, what it's trying to achieve. And so the attitudes and conversations that relate to how data drives decisions, I guess kind of, the approaches to how you manage that kind of flow out of that a little bit. So, if you need to improve a capability or build a service that isn't currently there, you may very well need to get into a more, if you like, technology type conversation around, well, I need to collect all my data in one place, or explicitly, I don't want to collect all my data in one place, but I do need to be able to use some of it to drive a decision. Technology is clearly an enabler, but it's rarely the starting point. And I think how that's kind of, I guess that how that sits with digital transformation, I would say data is really the fuel that powers digital. So digital disruption and transformation, in my view, isn't really new. We've been digitizing content, connecting to networks, talking about disruptive technologies for, well, definitely throughout my entire career, probably beyond that. So we've clearly seen a much greater impact and explosion of those in the last 10 years or so, with the rise of mobile social media, the quote unquote the internet. Arguably we'll see that explosion continue in the next 10, 20 years. I guess the result of that explosion is that the traditional barriers between stakeholders are perhaps eroded a little bit. More importantly, there's data and there's a lot of it. And whilst having lots of data is great, unless you can really harness the power of it to drive insight and benefit and advantage from it, more data isn't necessarily better. So, do I see the two things inherently linked? Absolutely, because the more you have, the more people kind of go, oh, maybe I should do something about that. What do I do? And it becomes the elephant in the room that you go, I don't really know which bit of that I really want to eat. In fact, I might not want to eat any of it. Help. And so you do see some organizations kind of, oh, well, I'm so far behind, I can't get anywhere near it, or and it's a bit of this kind of imposter syndrome around how good am I with my data or not, and should I really transform myself digitally or not, or I can't possibly be disrupted because my industry is immune to all that stuff, which is, and in fact my last client said exactly that, which was, well, we're making loads of money, so why do we have to worry? So we might have to worry this week, but I've just had a look at your business model and I think I might be able to disrupt that quite quickly. And I'm no expert in your industry. So what happens if I was? What would happen there? Yeah. So I think it provides more opportunity, but equally, I think it's also a bit of a threat on the other side of the fence.
That's great. Yeah, we'll come back to some of the points you raised on starting the journeys and things a bit later on. David, you got anything to chip in on that in terms of data modernization and digital transformation?
Yeah, there's a lot of sensible points made. I guess I'd go in and say, when it comes to modernization of data, then to me that's an attitude more than anything else. That's about becoming more data driven. That's about taking advantage of the methods as well as the technologies that are currently available, but making the most of it for the actual business outcome that you're trying to achieve at this current moment. And I think that's a continually evolving thing in terms of what it is that you need to do and what technologies you need to use. So keeping abreast of that and making the most of it is fairly key. In terms of how that fits with digital transformation, I find that quite interesting. I'm absolutely with Stuart here. I reckon I'm on my fourth iteration of different types of digital transformation with slightly different titles since my career started. However, I would actually link them together because I think data modernization is a central pillar to the latest iteration of digital transformation. That move towards SaaS platforms, multiple applications, and then moving on towards composability is very, very key. As you know, Brian, we're interested in being able to provide composable business capabilities through integration and intelligent process automation. And to do that, you have to have a more modern data estate to actually get the benefits for those kinds of outcomes. So I find it, quite fundamentally linked, and that doesn't mean to say that they will stay the same. I think what those terms mean will develop every few years or so in terms of what that kind of outcome people expect from that.
That's great. Thank you, David. Thanks.